Hi, Mary Rafferty here, and in today's video I want to share with you an analogy that can be very useful when you feel you're in a conversation with somebody and you have this sense they're not listening to you. You're trying to perhaps get them to understand your viewpoint, perhaps change what they're doing or how they're doing something. They're not taking on board what you say. They're just arguing back. You keep explaining why, you keep explaining here's a better way of doing it, and they just argue back, and you have that sense that you're meeting with a brick wall. Now, I remember when I was a child, and I would go to my parents and I would ask them, I would be asking for something like, can I go and visit a friend, or can I go to a party, or can I buy X, Y, or Z? And they would say no. And I would say, but why? And they would say, because that's the why. And I remember that being one of the most frustrating and disempowering things you could say. You really have a sense you don't know where else to go with this. And it can be like that also in these conversations. So I was doing some coaching recently with, let's call him Paul. Paul is a team leader in a client service organization. He was trying to, the organization is changing, and they want to change how the frontline staff are interacting with the clients. He was having a conversation with one of them, Jim. He was explaining we need to have a broader focus, we need to have seeing more clients, we need to be involving other services. Jim wasn't having any of it. No, we can't do it because, no. Paul would make another argument, and here's how it's good for the client, and here's how it's good for the organization, and where times are changing, we have to move forward, we can't be left behind, etc. But Jim wasn't having any of it. It was a real sense of, because that's the why. The metaphor of an iceberg is one of my favorite to depict what happens in these kinds of negotiations or conversations. So in an iceberg, 1/10 of an iceberg is above water and 9/10 below. And it's a little bit like that in these kinds of conversations. Only a small part of what Jim is saying is expressing what's really going on beneath the surface, as it were, for Jim. In other words, what are the kind of true drivers behind his resistance? So it might be his thinking and his feeling, his concerns. Maybe it's about his values, maybe it's about his identity, how he sees himself. It's about the interpretations he has on what the change might mean for him. All of that stuff is more than likely not coming out in the arguments, the no arguments that he's making to Paul. So why might it be useful for Paul to understand what's happening beneath the iceberg? Well, 3 reasons actually. First of all, if Paul had more insight and more understanding of what it was that was kind of blocking Jim, what were the underlying reasons behind his resistance? Was it about fear of change? Was it about his values, that perhaps he saw his role in a different way, and that the new version that Paul had proposed, seeing lots of people and just having a very superficial interaction with lots of people, that was kind of contravening his values? Was it perhaps fear of not having the skills and capabilities to do that? Was it fear of too much work? Until Paul knows that, then he can't really address those concerns, can't really move the conversation forward in a useful way that starts to look at what would work for both people. The second reason is, I know myself, I've never used the phrase because that's the why in a workplace, but I have been guilty of using it with my girls when they were smaller as a parent. They would say, oh, Mum, you better tell us why. I would have to think. I kind of say, yeah, why don't I want to let them go to the party or to visit the friend? And that's very often in the case of the Jims of this world. They actually haven't thought through. I don't think it's a good idea, but why do I not think it's a good idea? So by Paul asking about this and exploring it, it helps Jim understand himself better too. And of course, the third reason is that asking these kind of questions and showing interest in Jim's viewpoint and Jim's view of the world will build much better connection and goodwill between the two of them. And of course, that's an essential prerequisite for any kind of collaboration and cooperation. So the key takeaway from this video, when you find yourself in one of those push-pull conversations and you feel you've met an iceberg, you've probably started to build one around yourself as well, because Paul was also getting kind of stuck in about his way of doing it. And when that happens, somebody's going to have to get out there with the pickaxe and start asking questions and build some mutual understanding, first of all, before trying to find ways to meet everybody's needs and find a workable action plan to move forward.